Around the turn of the millennium, following the impact of movies like Michael Haneke's Funny Games, European filmmakers, French filmmakers in particular, began dabbling in films that straddled both art house and grindhouse. The early films of the new French Extremity movement, like Gaspar Noé's I Stand Alone and Irreversible, or Claire Denis' Trouble Every Day, were predominantly art house dramas that just happened to contain visceral, extreme horror, the likes of which audiences hadn't seen before. But it wasn't until 2003 that new French Extremity arrived firmly within the horror genre. Director Alexandre Aja made a home invasion film about a family being brutally murdered and pursued by a deranged killer, which perfectly seemed to balance both French art house with 70s grindhouse aesthetics. High Tension, or Switchblade Romance, crossed over from being simply an indie art house movie into being a mainstream horror success, and arguably became one of the most influential films of that decade, giving horror a more grimy, 70s style aesthetic. From this point onwards, France continued to create brutal, unflinching horror films like Martyrs, Inside, and Frontiers. But another less talked about movie from this movement, about a home invasion in Romania in 2006, remains one of the most tense and dread-inducing films of the decade.
Hello? Hello?
Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of home invasion, and we discuss two new French Extremity classics, High Tension and Them. Bonjour and welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike Munzer. As ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. We are currently in the middle of our 9th season exploring the evolution of home invasion films, and this is part 21. Can't believe we're already up to week 21 of this series. But this week, as that intro suggested, we are going to be talking about two French classics from the 2000s. This is where things get really nasty. We're talking High Tension, or Switchblade Romance, from 2003, and Il, or Them, from 2006. Both of these discussions will be spoilerific. One of these movies in particular has quite the twist, so I would recommend, if you can, give both films a watch before you listen to our discussion. Also, in the middle of this week's episode, excitingly, Leonie Rowland from GRIMMFEST is going to be dropping in to talk a little bit about the brilliant programme and lineup of films that they've got happening in this year's festival. GRIMMFEST happens every year in October up in Manchester, a brilliant 3 days of back-to-back original horror movies and premieres. And Evolution of Horror are very lucky to be partnering with the festival this year, which means that me and a bunch of other friends of the pod are going to be at the festival throughout the weekend in October. So stay tuned for a chat with Leonie, where we're going to be giving you all the info about some of the best movies that you should not be missing at this year's GRIMMFEST. So, on to some new French Extremity then. Joining me to discuss all things High Tension and Them, a very good friend of this podcast. She was last here on the podcast discussing Bram Stoker's Dracula with me in our vampire series, and she has recently just been made editor-in-chief at Den of Geek. Incredible. Welcome back, Rosie Fletcher. Hello, Rosie.
Hello.
Hello. Lovely to have you back. Editor-in-chief, congratulations. This is so cool.
Thank you. This is only a fairly new development, only in the last couple of weeks. But yes, I am now allowed to be officially called editor-in-chief. I have a co-editor-in-chief in the States, a guy called John. But yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It's so cool because you were the UK editor of Den of Geek, right? So now it's the whole thing. You're editor-in-chief of the whole damn kingdom. I love it. How's the transition been? Is it a hell of a lot more work all of a sudden?
It is. I tell you what it is. It's a lot of meetings.
Ah, classic. Yeah.
It is nice to be able to kind of really dive into strategy. I'm off to the States next week to meet up with my colleagues and to really sort of delve into what we want to do with the brand going forward. So that's really exciting.
So cool. Do you find, as you've kind of moved higher up, like in your career, do you still have time to like go to watch films, go to screenings? Like, are you still keeping up with all the new releases from week to week, or are you too busy for that kind of thing now?
Do you know what? Not as much. I still go to some things, and I've done like, Barbenheimer obviously recently.
Yes.
But not as much as I used to. And I don't get to write quite as much as I used to. I still write, but just not as much.
And I've got to ask you what you thought of Barbenheimer. What did you think of these two films?
I thought they were both brilliant, actually.
So did I. Yeah.
No controversial opinions here. I thought Oppenheimer was a stone cold 5-star movie. I just thought it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
A bit long, but it kind of earned it. And I thought Barbie was wonderful. That's a 4-star for me. I've got one little niggle with Barbie, which is the montage sequence at the end when she's talking to Rip Owen. It's like, that's a bit schmaltzy.
Yes.
We already understood the point of this. The bit with the old lady on the bench, that got across this concept that she's kind of getting used to the idea of aging. So I didn't need that one little moment. But other than that, I thought it was a joyful film, and I would 100% see it again in a heartbeat.
Love that. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, both films, absolutely bangers. So good. And also, it came out in the same week as Talk to Me as well, which also one of my faves.
We saw that together, didn't we? And
I mean, and actually, because it's not been, I don't think it's been the strongest year for horror so far as well, which is a bit of a shame. Like, I'm struggling to think of any other films that I've really sort of loved. Like, we got some franchise movies like Scream early on in the year, obviously, and stuff like that, but an Insidious film and a few other things like that. But it's not been like, Talk to Me has felt like a real standout, I think, so far this year.
Yeah. No, I would agree. You know what? I'm struggling to really think of what much else there's been, which is a bit bad.
It's not been a vintage year, because I felt like last year we had a lot of amazing stuff, but we are hurtling into the spooky season. Are you excited for Saw X, Saw 10?
No, I'm not. No, and I didn't see Spiral, and I know your feelings on Spiral. And I haven't seen last Voyage of the Demeter. Have you seen that?
No, because there's some issue. We're not getting it over here, right? Everyone else is like, I think we're not getting a cinema release for it. It's something to do with all those problems with E1 and everything. But I
quite fancy that. That's one that, because I like that director, and I think that's sort
of course,
interesting.
And of course, the last time you were on the podcast, we were talking about Dracula together, weren't we? In the vampire series, and now we're talking about home invasion movies, a little bit darker, a little bit bleaker than vampire things. What are your thoughts, Rosie? Like, when you hear kind of home invasion, do you tend to kind of gravitate towards home invasion movies as a horror fan? Do you like them?
Well, do you know what? If you'd asked me a few years ago, I would say yes. Because I like the genre. I like the domestic setting. I like that it's really pared down and people have to be really inventive. But watching these two again, post-pandemic, a little bit stressful. I'm not going to lie. It was a bit like, I don't know. I mean, I still like the genre. And I think, and even when it's like a twist in it, so for example, Don't Breathe, the first one, I thought was a magnificent film. But it felt, but watching these two again sort of felt like this is actually quite nightmarish and
That's interesting. Nightmarish because sometimes nightmarish is a good thing, right? But in nightmarish in a not so fun way, do you mean this time?
Just, it is a little bit too easy because I'm stuck at home all the time.
Yes.
To suddenly start thinking, like, do I want this in my house?
No, totally. I think that is definitely, I wonder if that has changed for people since the pandemic. It's definitely a reaction that I had from a lot of people when I announced that I was doing home invasion as the next subgenre. Like, people, even a lot of like seasoned horror fans are like, oh no, that's the stuff that I can't watch, or that's the stuff that I struggle with, which is interesting, right? Yeah,
and actually I've got quite a few friends who don't watch home invasion movies, and predominantly they're people that I know who live alone. And I really get that. Like, if it's just like, I can watch zombies and vampires and werewolves till the cows come home, but I don't think I really want to invite this in when I have to go to bed alone, and I don't really want those thoughts in my head. I do not live alone.
No. And you're absolutely right. I think that does make a difference. Have you ever had, like living in London and all that kind of thing, have you ever had anything like that happen to you, like a break-in or anything like that?
Well, not in London, but when I was in Leeds, where I was at university, oh God, this is a ridiculous story. So me and my housemates, which was a bloke and a girl. We had 5 houses. There was 5 of us, but only the guy and the girl were there and me. And we were watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a big favourite of mine. And it was some ungodly hour in the morning. And that movie has got a lot of screaming in it, right? So
yes.
So like James, the guy, thinks he hears something in the house. But because I'm being all like, oh, chainsaw, like, I'm like, no, don't go up. And then later he does go up. And we've been broken into through a first floor window. So while we were downstairs, and they've come in through, so Penny was the girl who lived there, and they'd come in through her window, stolen a rucksack, taken loads of her jewellery, come into my room, stolen some CDs. I had nothing of any value. Went up into James's room, stole a watch. Like basically this person was wandering around our house while we were downstairs watching Texas Chainsaw. And like that was really bad. And Penny's window didn't lock, so I ended up sleeping on her floor for a couple of nights because she was really freaked out, understandably. So, not the same, almost certainly kids, but that was a bit like, don't like it. Coming in there.
No, there's something about it, isn't there? Like the fact that you were all just sat downstairs and that was, because it's like, I don't know what's worse, like, knowing that somebody has been and gone while you didn't even notice, or actually catching somebody. But
catching them with there, right? And so it was James who'd gone up, and then and I can't remember exactly what happened, but like I think there was an awareness that something had happened, and I went to walk up, but he didn't know the person had gone, and he said, "No, go back downstairs," and I'm like,
"Oh, fuck!"
But he was like, "I'm not going to let you come up until I've made sure, And it wasn't just, and to be fair to James, it wasn't just him being manly. Like James was like a Thai boxer, so he was far more equipped to deal with that than I was. But it was like, it hadn't occurred to me, but it clearly had occurred to him that we don't 100% know this guy's gone, and it's a 3-story house, so this guy could be upstairs. Just like pretty scary, quite honestly.
That is terrifying. And I think that also gets to the crux of what people find so troubling about it, right? Is that compared to almost any other subgenre I can think of, this is something that could happen to you, right? Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah, it's and that in itself is pretty troubling. And we did get a lot of them. I mean, we're about to talk about kind of particularly movies made in the 2000s, and it does feel like we got a lot of them. Some of them kind of like. Maybe it's quite a cheap, easy thing to make, right? You set it all in a house with a couple of people, like tied up in a basement or whatever, right? Like, what do you think separates like the good home invasion movies from the naff ones? I suppose.
Well, I think a couple of things. So we're going to be talking about Eel, them, and Switchblade Romance, or High Tension or Haute Tension, and I think that the two of them have different things that make them good. But like, so Haute Tension is a good film because of the director. Like, it's not a film about plot. It's just extraordinarily well made. So that all the way through, it's so, the title is correct. It's so tense. So I think it either needs to be something like that, which is so pared back, but is unbearably stressful, or it needs to be something that has a really cool idea. So what it can't be, for me anyway, is person breaks into house and terrorizes people for no reason and there's nothing else to it. That's just horrible,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what happened, post movies like these and Funny Games and The Strangers. It was something like everyone felt they could make these movies where, you're just watching people scream in a basement getting terrorized by people in masks or whatever it might be, right? And how many Fright Fests or whatever have we been to where those movies, there was a lot of them, it felt like, for a significant chunk of time.
And it's got, I think they've got to have thriller hearts rather than torture hearts, because somebody comes into someone's house and tortures a bunch of people, there is no joy in that for me. Like, I need to care about the characters, and I need to think that they've got at least a fighting chance of escaping.
That's a really good shout. I love that. I love what you said about it having more of a thriller heart as well, because I think so many of the films I've covered up until this point have been more on that kind of thriller side of the line than horror, going all the way back to stuff like Rear Window. Like,
Right.
you know, there are these kind of like classic thrillers that deal with home invasion, but they weren't necessarily labeled home invasion at the time, right? But we've kind of always had them, these kind of like, there's a prowler in the house type of movies. And I think it's only really in the 2000s when we got this like glut of them that it became a real thing, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And I think also, so part of the, I think joy is not the right word, but part of the enjoyment is that you want your characters not to do stupid things. Because all the time you're thinking, right, what would I do? And so they kind of have to be like, they can't be like a one-man army, because then that's not funny, because it's not entertaining, because it's like, well, I would never be able to do that, so this isn't going to work. But they can't keep doing really dumb things, because then they don't care anymore. So it's got to be like, and both Eel and Switchblade Romance have protagonists who do sensible things. They do the things that you think, I would, do that. Yeah, do that. No, run. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, so that you really relate in that way.
Yeah, absolutely right. You're so right about that. Like, there's nothing worse, I think, than being trapped in a single location watching a film like that with a character that is just constantly doing the wrong thing or the stupid thing, I think, you know?
Being trapped in a house with an idiot is it's a different kind of horror.
It is unbearable. Also, in relation to what we're talking about with these two movies, is New French Extremity, again, which is kind of this kind of very specific like era, I feel like, you know, of movies that ran sort of from the late 90s to the late 2000s, roughly, right? What are your thoughts on these films? Because again, this is a kind of movement of films that some people, particularly people that aren't sort of diehard horror fans, are like, oh no, I stay away from that stuff, you know? But what do you think of it?
Well, to my mind, and to my slightly ill-educated mind, it felt a bit like France was not massively famous for horror.
No.
And the horror that it was famous for were things like Eyes Without a Face and Les Diaboliques, which are both excellent films.
Beautiful.
But are beautiful, exactly. That are beautiful, creepy art house, but amazing films, but not extreme. And then something happened, don't know what, around that era, and suddenly the French started making these fucking hardcore, gory, furious films. And at the time, I absolutely loved it. Like, there was such vigor to it, you know? There was such an anger to it.
Yes.
Like, I don't know whether I've got a taste for it so much now, but certainly then it felt really exciting.
Yeah, there is, and I feel like this with horror all around the world during the 2000s, like that anger, that nastiness, that kind of nihilism that we got in sort of the quote unquote torture porn movies in the US, a lot of Asian cinema and French cinema. It was kind of happening everywhere. Like, horror movies were becoming so gritty and nasty, weren't they? But do you think that is there a difference between, like, in your head, between the kind of what the French horror filmmakers were doing compared to like what Eli Roth was doing, for example?
I don't know. I mean, I think that some of this stuff was in relation to, was a backlash to the 90s, wasn't it? So it was like Scream, and then all of the teen ones, which were like softer and sillier. And I think some horror fans were like, nah, I want to see something horror. So I suppose the difference I would see between stuff like, well, the things that Eli Roth was doing is Eli Roth's, it doesn't have that class element. I'm not saying that all New French Extremity does, but some of it does. But it's often a bit tongue in cheek and like all American, and it doesn't feel angry actually. Like Cabin Fever is not an angry movie. I like Cabin Fever, and it's got jokes. And like Hostel is not an angry movie, and you know, whereas Frontier is a very angry movie. Like, you know, that scene at the end when the girl comes out and she's screaming. Yes, like there's a rawness and a realness and a weight to some of these French movies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I think that it's tonally, there's something very different, isn't there? Like, there are no lulls to be had in these French movies for the most part, right? No. And you're right. I think they take them seriously. There is this tradition in French cinema of French cinema being highbrow, right? Like art house, I suppose. Like you've talked about Les Diaboliques, and actually even in this movement, like, this is something that I know Alex West, who wrote a book on New French Extremity, she talks about this, where the early stages of the New French Extremity movement were more sort of art house than horror, like Irreversible and Trouble Every Day. And then, like, as it moves on into Il, and then Inside, and then Martyrs, it gradually kind of goes more on the horror end of the spectrum kind of thing, but it still has that kind of art house sensibility almost.
Right. Because you'd never talk about Hostel and call it highbrow, but you could.
No.
Like, you could very genuinely argue that Martyrs is highbrow. Like,
yes,
you know, so yes. They have a seriousness. I mean, and you talk about Irreversible. I mean, you're not going to get an angrier movie than Irreversible. I mean, that's
fuck
amazing.
That's still to this day. I think one of the most disturbing films I've ever watched. Like, I think it's so powerful.
It's a great film, but it's a one watch. That one.
Yeah, it's one watch. That movie is like an attack, isn't it? It is like unbelievable. And I suppose we've had like a few movies that sort of feel like latecomers in that movement, like Julia Ducournau's Raw and Titan, and I guess Gaspar Noé's stuff like Climax too. Like, they are almost that kind of vibe as well.
Yeah, they are. I mean, like, I love Raw, and Raw is funny, actually.
Yes, it is. That's the thing. That's the difference, right? That tonally, they don't quite fit. Yeah.
And also, I suppose it's not new. So Raw doesn't feel, I don't know, Raw is really special to me. So this almost feels like a thing, you know, it's highbrow, it's funny, it's really, really female. It is it's not angry, but it deals with that kind of inner torment that a lot of women have. So so I suppose there are, but like, it almost felt like the stuff in the late 90s and early 2000s it felt like it was making a point. It felt like a scream, you know? It felt like people going, nah! Yeah,
absolutely. That's what it is. There is as you put it perfectly, there is a fury, I think, to these movies from this particular era. And you know, that's another interesting thing, though, is that you mentioned Raw is a very female film. The films of the new French Extremity do focus a lot on women, right? Like, is there a connection there, too, in terms of French cinema compared to Hollywood cinema? You know, when you think of High Tension, Martyrs, Inside, these are all movies that are, a lot of them are made by blokes, right? But they're about women?
So I don't necessarily agree with that, because there is a long tradition of women getting tortured in films. And largely speaking, a lot of these films, not all of them, but a lot of these films are made by men. Raw, on the other hand, is not women getting tortured. It's women torturing themselves, if you will, and finding...
Yeah.
Like those, you know, Justine is not a victim. Not in any traditional sense at all. So, like, that's discussing female psychology, really. Whereas, like, and let's not forget that Eli Roth made Hostel 2, which is a film I hate, and that's all women. But nobody's going to tell you that that's like a feminine film or a feminist film. Not that it has to be, you know. And also, all films with women don't have to be feminist.
No.
So I'm not saying that is a negative thing in any way. But I think having female characters be tortured in one way or another is not particularly unusual.
No, you're absolutely right. That's so true.
Having said that, though, Inside is a different story, because that is very female-centric, and that's a completely different kind of story. But
that's interesting. Okay. Do you have any, before we move on to these two films specifically, do you have any other favourites from this whole like new French Extremity wave?
There's a Vincent Cassel film called Shaitan.
I've not seen this one.
Right.
No.
I think it's from 2006, and it's really funny, and it's not like a super angry film, and it's also really gross. But it's weird. It's so weird. I saw that at Fright Fest many years ago, but I don't know whether it entirely counts as new French Extremity.
I have not even heard of this. I'm going to have to check it out.
Well, when you've seen it, there is one particular scene you're going to be texting me about, and I'll go, I know, right?
Wow.
Which is particularly disgusting and funny. But that one, I really enjoyed that. And actually, like, to be honest, like, Eel is a favourite. Like, that was the one I really wanted to talk to you about from the word go. I saw that like at a screening years and years ago, and was so gripped by it. Like,
oh my god! Oh well, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk to you about this one for sure. All right, well, let's get into it. We'll go chronologically. So we're going to kick things off by talking about High Tension from 2003, aka Haute Tension, aka Switchblade Romance. Why is it that we in the UK get a different title to everyone else? It's really weird.
I don't know, but I quite like the title Switchblade Romance. I think it's quite evocative.
It is actually. It is. It's just so funny that it's so different to what the actual title is. It's very strange. But High Tension then from 2003. Rosie, just set us up. Give us a little brief plot summary of this movie.
Okay, so first of all, I will point out that this is not really a plot-driven movie.
It's a very good point.
So the plot is two best friends, Alex and Marie, go to visit Alex's family, who live in the remote countryside, and then a disgusting man in a truck comes around and kills everyone, and it's trying to kill the two friends, two girls, and so that's essentially the story.
Exactly.
But you don't come to High Tension for the story. Like, that's not what this film was for.
So interesting. So first of all, just tell me a little bit about your own history. Do you remember when you sort of first saw this film, and what do you think of the film generally?
So I don't remember specifically when I first saw it, but I think that I was listening to or watching something with Mark Kermode. I think he referenced it or recommended it, and I think I sought it out after that. So it wasn't in a cinema. It was certainly at home. And yeah, when I first saw it, I loved it. I hated the end, but we'll get onto that.
Yes, absolutely.
Watching it again now, it is a very, very well-made film. I just don't think you can argue with the craft of that movie. Yeah. But I think there were some things about it that it is many years later, I'm a little bit like, that doesn't sit quite comfortably with me. But it's good. And if you haven't seen it, you must watch it.
Yeah, I'm completely on the same page as you. Like, I like this film a lot. I think you're right. Like, I think it's weird because in my head, movies made in the 2000s are still very modern and recent, right? But like, this movie is 20 years old now, and I really felt it when I watched it this week. I was like, actually, this film now feels old to me, which is weird. Like, the style of it, the way it looks, I still think it's actually, like you said, it looks amazing. It's really well directed, but it does look dated now. It looks of its time, I think, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I think the other thing about this movie is it has got one of the worst final acts out of any movie I've seen in a very long time. Like, I think the twist, which we will talk about, is so bad for so many reasons. I think it doesn't make any narrative sense. It doesn't make any thematic sense, and also it is kind of offensive as well. I think there's something a bit homophobic under the surface here in this film, and I think for all of those reasons, again, it feels very 20 years old. So I think while about 80% of this film I actually really like and really admire, and I think it's a really exciting, scary horror film, I think the story has some issues, particularly at the end, and I don't know, I end up with a bit of a bad taste in my mouth by the time the credits roll, you know? But there's a lot to admire here too, so I want to talk about all of these elements. Let's start off by talking about Alexander Aja then, as a director. He'd made a film before this one, but this was his big breakthrough, right? And of course, he's gone on to make quite a weird, eclectic mix of movies. He's gone on to do kind of monster movies and all kinds of other things. What do you think of Alexander Aja generally? Are you a fan of his work?
Sometimes. So I didn't see his first movie, which I gather is called Fury. I don't know if did you see that?
I haven't seen that. No.
So I don't really know anything about that. But this High Tension was his second, and like that is a very, very impressive film. But of the things he's gone on to do, like half of them I haven't seen. I have seen Mirrors, but I seem to remember it being terrible.
Yes.
Crawl, on the other hand, I really liked. That's the
so fun.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Alligator, not crocodile. Crawl, I thought was like, it was using the same thing. So very limited location, lots of good kills, plenty of alligators, cared about people, monster movie, good times.
Yes.
I also quite liked Horns, although I think obviously I loved Daniel Radcliffe, but I don't think he was the right choice for that role. But yeah, so he's an interesting one, isn't he?
He is interesting. And like, I think all of those films, what they have in common is, even if the story's a bit naff, it's directed pretty well, I think. Like, I think he is a really good visual director. He knows how to pull off tension, right? I think even in Crawl, the big silly alligator movie, I remember it being really fucking tense when I watched that in the cinema. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree. And I think that's what didn't quite work for Horns, because Horns is a really good story. Like, it's very, very plot heavy, and so while that looked nice, it doesn't want to be tense. It's supposed to be a romance, that film, really, like romance horror. It just didn't quite land. Yeah, whereas Crawl was like, yes, one of the better monster movies of the last few years.
Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, the kind of look and vibe of this film, again, like, it really feels like it's placed so firmly in that kind of early 2000s. Like, it reminds me of, this would have been the same year, right, as the sort of Platinum Dunes Texas Chainsaw remake and those sorts of movies, right? And it feels it has a similarity to that kind of stuff.
It does. And actually, Aja went on to do Hills of Eyes, the remake, which also has that look. And I quite like that. I thought that was quite good as the remake, as that era of remakes go. I thought that was one of the better ones.
Yeah. So yeah, like, how would you, like, what do you think? You mentioned already you think this movie is more about the kind of the vibe, the look, than it is the story, right? Like, what is it about this movie and the way he directs it that impresses you, would you say?
So I think it's that, so it's an incredibly simple premise, and you are with, largely speaking, you are with Marie, who's played by Cécile de France. You're with her.
Yeah. Apologies in advance if both me and Rosie massacre any French names throughout this episode. We're both going to do it. Yeah.
So I'm either going to be massively anglicising things, Cécile de France, or I'm going to be doing the Cécile de France.
Yeah, exactly.
It's doing the embarrassment.
And it's like, which sounds worse in a way.
Which sounds more embarrassing. So I'm going to alternate between the two. So for now, it's Cécile de France.
Yeah.
So you're with her, and basically she doesn't know what's going on at all. Like, this random gross old bloke turns up, kills the dad, kills the mum, kills the fucking kid, kills the dog, like, and she's just like, holy shit, and doesn't know. And so she knows as little as us. So you've got a protagonist who doesn't know what's going on, an antagonist who you've got no context for whatsoever. So there's no motive. There's not. Well, maybe there is. We don't know. So she's just basically running about this house, really trying not to die, and then trying to help her friend, who she then finds like chained up and gagged.
Yeah.
Which is a clever plot device.
Yes.
Actually.
Because she can't say anything until the end of the film.
Until the end of the film, which is a very crucial plot point.
Yeah.
And I know that they had initially intended it all to be shot, like, all to be set in the house, but then decided they wanted like further locations. So there's a gas station scene and there's some outdoor car chasey bits. But basically, I think it's so effective because it keeps you like tense the whole way through. And it's not a very long film, but it really doesn't feel long either. I don't know about you, but it zips by.
Do you know what? This and Eel, it's like you can bash them both out in like under 3 hours, right? They're both like 80 minutes or something. It's so good. And they both, like you say, so simple, stripped back, straight into it. And I agree with you. I think this movie is like, basically from about the 10-minute mark when they all go to bed and the house gets broken into, like all the way through to the slightly silly final 15 minutes maybe, is like rip-roaring, scary, exciting, fun. I love it.
And it's gory and it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And what you've got is lots of scenes of Marie hiding and seeing horrific things, and like, you don't know if she's going to be all right.
Yeah. And
it is absolutely like, from, as you say, 10 minutes or whatever it is in, when there's that first kill, the dad, which is, I mean, to be honest, I'd remembered that as being, oh my fucking God, this is the greatest thing ever. Yes. And when I watched it, it's like, it's cool, but it doesn't actually look as convincing as...
No, you're right. That's what's really interesting. I think that's what I felt when I said it feels a bit dated now, because I definitely remember this too, this being quite a big thing at the time. And I listened or read somebody, maybe it was Mark Kermode as well, or I think maybe it had been written about in Empire or Total Film. But I remember there being quite a lot of buzz about this movie. And I think it was, as opposed to stuff like Trouble Every Day or Irreversible, I think this was one of those early French extreme movies that crossed over, because it's much more kind of like a genre film, isn't it, really? And I remember people kind of saying, oh my God, this is a new dawn in horror. After all of those kind of glossy 90s movies, sometimes all of a sudden we're getting something we've not seen before, which is like this man getting brutally beheaded on screen with a sort of banister and a bookcase, right?
He sticks his head through, can't get his head out, and then murderer bashes a bookcase or whatever it is into his head, and then you see the neck bashing with the blood. But that's really early on. So it's basically saying to you, like, this is essentially saying this is not a thriller, this is a fucking horror movie.
Yes.
Like, and then when and then the mother dies, and then the kid dies, and it's just like, okay, there are not rules here.
Right, exactly.
And the dog dies. Wait, no, there are not rules here.
No.
Like, this guy is on the rampage. We do not know why. And Marie doesn't know why. All Marie knows is that Alex has not been killed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Until the end.
Until the end, exactly. And we will go full spoilers with this, because I do want to ask you about the end. But first of all, let me ask you about some of these characters. You know, like how much does this movie care about our characters? How much do we care about them, right? Like, for example, our main two characters of Marie and Alex, and these kind of best friend duo that we're introduced to. What do you think of them generally?
So on a rewatch, obviously knowing the ending, there are some signposts, actually, which I definitely didn't notice the first time around. But I think you like them. They're funny and they're mates, and they're kind of, having a drink and smoking some fags and visiting the family, and they're both likable, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you notice that Marie is a bit judgy of Alex's boyfriends.
That's right.
Which is a bit of a signpost quite early on. But if you didn't know the ending, I don't know that you would really. I might think, all right, judgy, but I don't think I would think much of that. And you are with Marie. You're physically with her.
Yes,
I mean, you know what I mean. But also, you care about her because she goes through such a lot and is really resilient and is really single-minded and doesn't, crucially, make a load of stupid decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Really single-mindedly trying not to die, and then also trying to help her friend and being a good friend to her friend. Like, she's not going to let her go. She's not going to just be like, well, fuck you,
Yes,
I'm fine, goodbye. Like,
yes,
she's really loyal. So you do sort of care. And also that, I mean, Cécile de France is it's an amazing performance. I read that she had to do crazy amounts of training to be able to pull off that level of physicality, and you can sort of see why.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Absolutely. Yeah, it must have been quite a grueling shoot, actually, at times, right?
Yeah.
The two of them are just like drenched in blood by the end of it as well. I think they're both really interesting too, and maybe we need to just get into it with the context of the plot twist in mind, because also another question I have for you is, well, what's really happening here? Is Marie in love with Alex? Like, is that something that's set up? There's that scene at the beginning, obviously before anything really happens, where she's sitting outside and she catches sight of Alex in the shower, right? And she's watching her naked, and then, a few minutes later she goes to bed and she's masturbating, and then that almost seems to be the moment that triggers the home invasion from this man, right? I.e., that must trigger some sort of transformation in her, I guess. But yeah, what do you make of this kind of dynamic?
Well, that's one of the things that I actually found pretty problematic watching it back.
Right, yeah.
Because essentially she's being set up as the predatory lesbian who's, I fancy my mate, and therefore I've masturbated, and like the female sexuality and the orgasm has led to this madness in me that has meant that I've got to kill all her family for no particular reason. Mm-hmm. So that didn't sit quite right.
Agreed.
Agreed. And that she imagines herself like and her persona becomes this disgusting man. Yeah. Like, why would your persona be this gross old guy?
Yeah.
Like, why would your persona at the beginning, which is a weird scene, which I think we should talk about, like at the very start, there's this scene where he's basically got a head of a woman, and he's kind of
kind of performing oral sex on a severed head, basically, right?
Yeah, well, the severed head is performing oral sex on him.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
And then and he's going harder or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Saying something disgusting, and he lobs the head out of the door. Yeah, but it's like, well, for one, that character hadn't been in it to that point, and also, why would she have that fantasy? Like, where's that come from? Like,
no, you're right. Like, I don't really understand, because, well, we should lay it out actually for people who don't know. The twist at the end is that Marie has been the killer the whole time, right? And that actually this disgusting man, this kind of redneck looking bloke, is actually just like a figment of her imagination, like a persona she's created in her head. So it wasn't really a home invasion. She was in the house the whole time and murdered them all, right? But
but it's just a little bit confusing, because also the truck does exist.
Yes,
but they didn't arrive in the truck, so she must have spotted the truck. And I wasn't 100% on how the truck is in. But the truck does exist.
Yeah. It's really
And also,
strange.
where did all the chains and that gag come from?
Right, exactly. Where's she get? No, I don't think any of it makes any logical sense. And like,
No.
and also sort of as a sort of psychological horror film, it doesn't really make any sense either. Because yeah, exactly. What is it saying exactly? That she's a repressed lesbian and she just snaps because of the lust she feels for her friend and pictures herself as this disgusting man. Like, I don't understand. Yeah, I don't get it.
It's not. Yeah, it's like, and because. I don't know, and there's something about the stylings of it. Like Cécile de France is really beautiful, but it's notable that she has like very short hair and is kind of like strong.
Yes.
And it's like the slightly lesbian-y one.
Yes.
Has seen her friend's tits and gone mad.
Yeah.
Like
it's really weird.
It's not ideal.
And it's like, how long have they been friends for? And how well do they know each other? And why is it that all of a sudden on this night she's just turned into this bloke?
Right.
Like, there's no reason for it. There's no rationale in the story, you know?
No, and they know each other well enough for her to be introduced to the family and the family to be like, "So great to meet you."
And it's not like she's consciously, it's not like a ruse where all this time she's been planning it, I don't think, right? Like, in her head, she isn't the one doing the murders, right? Like, towards the end, she's genuinely shocked when Alex like is saying "stay away from me" and everything. You know, it's like, so she
because it's a split personality.
Yes,
I guess.
Yes.
So then, so presumably triggered by masturbating. So listen out, lesbians, don't you?
Don't you have a cheeky wank over your best friend, or this will happen. Basically,
or this will happen to you. So of course you can.
Yeah.
So, but it's like so. Then she becomes this split personality. So it's almost like she's living both lives.
Yeah.
Because some of it is real. Like she definitely gives Alex the knife, for example. That happens.
Yes.
And for her to do that, she must have been in the Marie persona to do that. So it's like, so she must be flitting between Marie persona and gross old trucker persona.
Yeah, you're right, because she, as in Marie, is in the back of the truck while the quote-unquote old man is driving it, right?
But she can't be.
No, because she's driving it.
She's driving it. Right. And she's driving it, and the gross old man pours alcohol over Alex, but that's obviously her.
Yes.
And so it's quite, I don't think it entirely holds up.
No.
But I don't think that's what the film is for. Like, I think it's a classic sort of thrill ride. But I personally, certainly the first time I saw it, hated the ending. Like, really, literally switch it off 10 minutes before it ends. Make up your own ending.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
terrible.
That's really interesting. And what was the moment that sort of triggered it? That reveal when we see in the CCTV that it's her in the gas station.
Yeah, that was for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
that was that moment.
Really interesting. I don't know why couldn't he have just made it a normal cat and mouse movie with these guys and these two girls? Like, it's such a strange decision, because you're right in some ways. Like you said, this film is so beautifully simple. It's why overcomplicate it with this weird twist? It's so strange, isn't it?
I know, but I think if it had just been bloke tries to kill women, maybe people would have. Maybe people wouldn't think that was enough or it wasn't clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the only film of its ilk to have a stupid ending like that. Like,
no.
There are many, many films where they go, it was her all along. And it's like,
Yes. It's a very Shyamalan thing to do, isn't it? It was all in their head the whole time. Multiple personality disorder. Here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a shame.
Mm-hmm.
In a way. I mean,
but you're still able to enjoy. You're still able to recommend this movie to people, would you? Like,
yeah, I would.
Yeah.
But I might consider switching it off 10 minutes before the end and making up your own ending. Just because. No, I mean, obviously, don't do that. But but it is, and it's got a callback, hasn't it? So
yes.
And so you ask whether Marie's in love with Alex. Well, I think in the narrative of the film, the answer is yes. I think in any kind of political narrative, fuck no.
Yeah.
That's not what that looks like. But at the end, she's like, we think we see her. I thought she was sitting on a wall at the beginning, like kicking her legs, saying something like, we'll never be apart again, or something like that.
Yes.
But actually, she's not. She's in a psych ward.
Yes, that's right. But like you said, for the most part, this movie is like really fun, tense, scary horror movie. What do you think? One of the things I've asked people a lot this season is, home invasion. Obviously, the house itself is usually so important. What do you think of the way Alexander Aja kind of uses this particular home in kind of the horror? Because I actually am really impressed with this film in that you do get quite a sense of the space and the geography between the rooms and that kind of thing,
Yes, you do. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's partly, I think it quite cleverly shows you round early on.
Yes.
So it's like, this is your room, this is mum's room. Obviously, so you're already given, and also it's not massive, even though it probably is massive in real life. It doesn't feel massive.
Yeah.
Which helps actually with the stress of it all, because she didn't have very many places to run or hide. There's that bathroom scene where you think she's hidden behind the shower curtain and he's there and he checks the water and you're like,
yes.
And the scene in the bedroom with the mother, and it feels quite sort of narrow corridors and trying to work out where he is, but not always knowing, and then watching all these people be, what for her, when we still believe that Marie is just a victim, like seeing these horrific things and having to make these decisions really quickly and also crucially silently, which I think is the reason why it's brilliant, because she's constantly like hiding places and
gagging her mouth and
gagging her mouth so that she won't sound, when really what she wants to do is like run and scream. And so of course she goes in to see Alex, who's chained up, and she's like, shh, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. But of course Alex knows it's her, so Alex is screaming, but we can't of course hear what Alex is saying. But there's something extra stressful about someone not being able to scream.
I agree. And actually, it's actually a really impressive thing to have a house that is, as you said, it's actually probably massive, but have a house that feels as small as this. Because,
it doesn't feel massive.
It really doesn't. And actually, this is something that I've noticed in a lot of home invasion movies, is that generally the houses tend to be massive. Like a couple of weeks ago, we talked about David Fincher's Panic Room, which is a great fun home invasion movie, but it's such a vast house, obviously, with like elevators and like all these sorts of things. And so many great movies. Parasite has that, Us has that, whatever. All these movies have these like almost labyrinthine homes to run around in and do whatever in. Whereas this film, it's like, it's all about that little claustrophobia. It's like we're in a kind of farm. It's like the Texas Chainsaw House, but with less corpses, but it's like that kind of a rural house.
Well, you're totally right. And so with that, because you mentioned class before.
Yeah.
You don't feel like Alex's family are particularly wealthy. No. They're just living on this little farmstead, and I think they're farmers, so it's this little quite homely, not fancy property they've welcomed her into, and it's all just kind of sweet and you think, God, this is just a nice couple with their little kid who wants to show his sister his cowboy outfit. You killed him. It's brutal.
Well, the other thing that's kind of funny and weird about it as well is that, in a way, you think that the movie might be making some sort of point about this weird rural backwards community, because the killer is maybe portrayed to be that kind of an archetype, right? In the kind of like what people might call like the Hicksploitation movies.
Yeah.
Because there's, Alex makes a throwaway joke about it, I think, about like the rednecks in the area or something, right? And so you think, oh, maybe there are some dodgy people. But actually, no, it has nothing to do with that, because it's Marie, who is not from this area. So whatever, like it's actually this outsider coming in to cause this harm, right?
Which also makes it a little bit weird that she would... Maybe it doesn't, but like that's her picture in her head.
Yes.
Her alter ego. Or maybe it's not weird. Maybe that's because she's early on in the car. She's like, what is there to do? And Alex is like, well, there's a town hall. There's like,
yes,
nothing much basically. So maybe that does sort of make sense that Marie would be like, oh, this is the kind of person,
right?
I've envisaged this gross.
Yes.
Boozy, stinky old man.
I agreed. And I think it's probably, again, I think this is a very kind of problematic thing to do. But I think also it's almost like her as a lesbian. It's almost like this is how she pictures a man, right? Like a man as this like, grotesque monster,
Right. And there's a bit where there's a really weird scene where it's Marie and the man.
Right. Yeah.
He's putting his fingers in her mouth in a very sort of gross sexual way, saying, does she turn you on? She turned me on.
Yes.
And it's like, this is a bit of a weird psychotic break, because you're currently both of these people.
Right. Yeah. It's what? It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But yeah, what do you find? And I think that's the thing, like, it's interesting that you said that originally they intended the whole film to be set in the house, because I did sort of feel that. I did feel that, like, maybe in the last third, it had to go somewhere, right? This also happens in Il too, right? That eventually we kind of break away from the home and we go somewhere else a little bit. And like, how did you find that when we venture away from the house and we have the section in the gas station and in the truck and all of that stuff?
I think it might have been nice to leave it in the house the whole time, but I absolutely understand the instinct of, like, this isn't a very big house. We've already done unspeakable things. How much more can we really get out of this? So I can see the point. And, like, I guess that helped with the plot device of the CCTV for a
right. That's true. Yeah. That's a really good point. And it's interesting because, again, the movie, we do get the gnarly kills, but actually it doesn't feel like the movie is that bothered about it being a sort of body count movie, like a slasher movie. Like, all of the family are dispensed with straight away, and then it's just these girls, quote unquote, and the killer, right? But like, like, he could have spaced out the kills a bit more and maybe elongated it, but that wasn't what the film is interested in, right? It wasn't interested in, will this family get away or won't they? It's like, get rid of the family, now it's just them.
It's difficult to entirely understand what Marie's motive is, and also what Marie's motive is for driving to the gas station and then killing the gas station bloke. Like, why?
Well, that's a weird scene too. Is it that the gas station bloke is sort of onto her and, like, knows that she's dangerous? Because there's that sort of section where I don't know, at the counter when she's going to buy something, and it's all a bit like, is he gonna call for help, or maybe know something's going on?
But then she goes back into Marie's self. But also that whole thing's weird because so she is both hiding from herself and also not hiding, and then she actually does call the police. Because they come. Although that also, this is just as an aside, this is a trope that I find infuriating in films, where it's like, she's like, so she calls police, and the police say, where is the gas station? And she's like, I don't know. And like, well, can you come? Well, I don't know where you are. And then she goes, and hangs up. No.
Yes.
Give it a bit longer. Maybe go outside, like, have a look and see if you could see. That's And although it doesn't infuriate me in this film, because of course it's not real. Like, without the twist, I'd be like, but because there is the twist, it's like, okay, you've hung up because you're.
I completely agree.
Like, you're having a psychotic break, so not rational.
But I think you're right. I think that's where there feels like there is a bit of a dividing line between like everything that happens in the house, which, as you've already mentioned, she's doing the smart thing. She's quiet. It's still incredibly tense, but it's not stupid, right? I do feel like when we get to the gas station onwards, it is a little bit more like, okay, this has gone a bit bonkers now, kind of thing. But it's, again, it just feels like a classic genre film.
It does, but also I understand the directorial choice, but just within the logic of the film, Marie has no motivation at all to take Alex out of the house.
That's a really good point. Why do they even leave? Yeah. Yes. What is her plan? What is her motive? Like, I don't get it. Where's she driving her? Like, what's she doing?
Exactly. And also, if the plan is, kill the family and then you can keep Alex forever, you're better off staying in the remote farmhouse than you are driving out with other people.
Yes. Was she worried that she'd get caught, so they have to go and hide somewhere together? Like, I don't know. Yeah, but we're left to kind of have to piece this stuff together in a way that it doesn't feel that satisfying, I think, does it? Yeah.
No. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a very strange. It's a very strange film, but having said all that, it's still really fun to watch. Like, it's still, like a film. It is like, a film like this can be both things, and it can have all kinds of issues, but actually still be really, really entertaining and fun to watch. And I agree with you. I would still recommend people check this movie out. Like, it's a really fun, turn out all the lights in your house, watch it by yourself. It's quite creepy, and it's exciting, and it's gross, and it's fun. It's good in that regard. It
is. And I think it's a lovely film that is in the moment. So it isn't a film to be picked apart afterwards, actually. I mean,
no.
It's quite fun to talk about, but it is a very sort of like, is visceral the right word?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
No, I think in the moment is the perfect way to put it, actually. And I think that's why it's almost surprising that they hit you with that twist, because it's almost like I wouldn't have thought that Alexander Aja would want us to go away and ponder this film. Like, it feels like it should be just this 90 minutes of pure adrenaline and then it's done kind of thing, which is why I think it's a strange choice that he did what he did with the story. But yeah.
And I mean, a very different film, but did you watch the French zombie movie La Horde?
No, I don't think I have, although it rings a bell.
That's like, it's in a tower block and there are loads of zombies.
I have seen it. Yes, I have seen it. Yes.
They're very different films, but I would liken the two because there's not really much plot. It's just there's a tower block, there are some zombies, but you're in the moment, you know?
Yes,
and like,
totally. I love that. And I love that when that's done. And actually, Eel, we'll talk about this with Eel, but I think that is very much an in-the-moment movie too,
much.
Right? And of course, again, like so many of these movies, I think you could go back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as the kind of perfect example of this, right? As it's just a movie of just pure nightmarish horror across one night, and then it's over. Like, it's like, that's it.
And Chainsaw is perfect, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, there are hints at the whys of Texas Chainsaw, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. No. It's not about like.
No. And imagine if it had turned out that Sally Hardesty was actually Leatherface at the end of Texas Chainsaw.
God.
That wouldn't have made it any better. We don't need that.
Oh my God. Mike Munson's remake of the Texas Chainsaw.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Absolutely not. So there you go. Well, that's high tension then. Do you, and like we've sort of touched upon this already, but how do you find the film holds up? You know, when you rewatched it again for this, how did you find it?
Well, I found it really tense. Still exactly as tense as it was the first time, even though I knew the plot twist. It is a tense film. Like, it's just very well timed, very well shot. Like, I came out of it quite anxious, which is good.
Yes.
But the subtext doesn't work.
I would actually love to know what a kind of like Gen Z would think of this film now watching it. Like, people that were born post this movie. And I would love to know what on earth they make of it, because it's such a weird little movie and dated in so many ways.
It is, yeah.
But also, like we've said, a kind of rip-roaring ride in that regard. So there you go. So that is High Tension, aka Switchblade Romance from 2003. Hello, everybody. Before we move into the second half of this week's episode, I'm just going to take a minute to thank this week's sponsor, and that is GRIMMFEST. GRIMMFEST is an independent genre film festival dedicated and committed to showcasing great movies by both new and established filmmakers from the world of genre cinema. GRIMMFEST happens in Manchester every year. It started back in 2009, and the upcoming 15th annual festival is going to be happening in October this year. And earlier this week, GRIMMFEST revealed their full programme of incredible looking movies. I am so excited to actually be in attendance. The Evolution of Horror are an official partner of GRIMMFEST this year, which means that me and other friends of the pod are going to be there all weekend. We're going to be hosting various events. We're going to be generally just hanging about the place, meeting people, and we would love to see as many of you there as possible. Now, dropping in for a little discussion of GRIMMFEST and to recommend some of her favourite picks from this year's programme is one of the festival directors, Leonie Rowland. Hello, Leonie. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm really good. I'm excited because as much as I love the summer, I'm kind of excited that we're gearing into the spooky time of year now with all of these awesome festivals and great stuff happening, right? It's very, very exciting. How is all of the prep for GRIMMFEST going?
Yeah, the prep is going fantastically. It's really, really wonderful to see it all coming together because obviously, especially because we only had one festival this year, it's been a really long run up to what is essentially an action-packed 3 days of running all over the Odeon and just generally enjoying being around other horror fans. So now that it's edging closer, it's a very, very exciting time at GRIMMFEST headquarters.
I love it. It's so exciting. So give us a bit of info. What can people expect from GRIMMFEST? People that have never heard of the festival or have never been there before. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so GRIMMFEST is in its 15th year, which is really exciting. It's a big anniversary for us. And first and foremost, it's a really exciting 3 days where we premiere the very best and most diverse of international horror. And then alongside this, we also have vendors, live performances, podcasting, of course, with yourselves, and just general mayhem at the Odeon Great Northern in Manchester. So this year, our program consists of 15 feature films and 3 shorts programs that will happen across the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the 6th to the 8th of October.
So exciting. I cannot wait to be there. This is my first time at GRIMMFEST, and I'm really excited. We're going to be doing lots of cool, fun things together at this festival, right? I think one of the things that people love about these kinds of festivals is that, you know, it's more than, you know, I guess it's different to like a kind of big international festival like Cannes or something, right? In that, like, it feels more intimate, and it has that kind of community vibe, right? I mean, does GRIMMFEST kind of have that vibe on top of all of these film premieres? Does it also have that kind of classic horror kind of festival vibe in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think intimate is a really wonderful word to describe GRIMMFEST. And I first joined the festival as a volunteer. There's a really amazing volunteer community, and that sense of community spreads out to the rest of the festival as well. I think you automatically have this vibe of intimacy and just enjoyment between the people who are working there that is very much shared by the people who attend as well. It's a very welcoming festival. And we have some other events to sort of enhance this community feel. So I know that this has not been officially announced yet, but you and Becky Dark are going to be doing a pub quiz on the Thursday night at one of our key sponsors, which is a pub called the Lion's Den. It's a really lovely, cozy pub. It's perfect for the autumn months that you were talking about. And even if you don't drink, I myself don't drink, it's a really, really lovely place to gather at the end of the day. So we'll be having a pub quiz there to kick off the festival and to allow some of the attendees to kind of meet each other. So
cool. I'm so excited for this. I love a pub quiz. I love hosting a pub quiz. So as you say, me and Becky will be there. We'll be there for the whole weekend, but we're going to be hosting that opening night pub quiz on the Thursday night at the Old Red Lion. It'll be so cool to meet some people there, hang out with some people. And let's talk a little bit. I mean, we won't go through the whole program, but let's talk a little bit about some of these movies that you're going to be screening as well. So yeah, I mean, like, how important was it for you guys when you were programming this? Because it feels like such an interesting kind of diverse lineup when I looked through the program. How important was it for you guys to kind of get in these kind of different types of horror movies from different voices, I suppose? Absolutely. It was our key focus among the programming team this year. Myself and my co-director, Leonie Blake, we're guest directing the festival this year. We're from the Manchester Centre for Gothic Studies. And my expertise is in Japanese horror with a wider interest in Asian horror. And Leonie has spent a lot of her career writing about political neoliberal horror and also female-centered horror. So we were very, very keen to build an international program with some voices who, for some reason, and this is still a mystery to me, but don't seem to be typically associated with horror in a commercial sense, but are actually often the people who are either on the receiving end of some of the horrific phenomena that are being discussed in these films in real life, or they're the creative minds behind them. And it's just so exciting to us that we're able to showcase such a diverse and exciting and creative range of voices in this program. So cool. Every film looks so interesting. And we don't have time to go through them all at this point, but I just wondered, is there a handful? Are there like 3 or 4 in particular that you want to kind of mention and kind of tell people about? Yeah, very much. So the ones that I personally am most excited for are we started off curating a J-horror strand that then spidered out into a wider Asian horror strand. We have an amazing film from the Philippines called Delita, which is directed by Mikhail Red. We are lucky to have the UK premiere, and it's a techno horror about a content moderator who suffers severe emotional and psychological effects from her job. And it's a wonderful meditation on alienation from our own suffering and the suffering of others in the digital age. We also have a wild film from Japan called Love Will Tear Us Apart, which is directed by Kenichi Ugana.
We also had the UK premiere of it, and I don't really know where to start with describing it. It's a hyperbolic romance that also descends into a very colourful slasher film, and then it's also something else entirely. Kenichi kind of is part of the horror lineage of Sion Sono, but he's also a filmmaker that is completely his own, and it's overblown and wonderful and just a fantastic late night horror film to experience.
Amazing. Oh, this sounds so exciting. Anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, so we have another film called Faceless After Dark, which is directed by Raymond Wood from the USA and starring Jenna Connell, who was one of the stars of the Terrifier films. Jenna also co-wrote on Faceless After Dark, and it's about an actress doing the convention circuit, and she's simultaneously confronted with the realities of her career and some of the less ideal tendencies of her fan base. And it's very much speaking to Jenna's own experience with the Terrifier franchise, and it's just a really wonderful, female-centered, cathartic, brilliant film that I'm very, very excited to be screening.
Ooh, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Do I have time to mention one more?
You do. Go for it.
Fantastic. So we have an anthology series called Give Me an A. It was, the creative mind behind it is Natasha Halevi, and it's responding to the overturning of Roe versus Wade in America, which ended the right to abortion and bodily autonomy for millions of women. And it was, a socio-political moment that really necessitates public outcry that is only benefiting of the horror genre. It's an important, timely film that also has a huge amount of creativity and passion and energy behind it. So we're really, really excited to be screening that as well.
I love this. All of these films sound fascinating, and I'm also quite excited for as well a kind of older movie that you're going to be premiering as well, right? Called Door. I mean, you've spoken about your love for J-horror and Asian horror, and this was this is a movie from the late 80s, right? A kind of lost J-horror that's never been screened before in the UK. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
So Door was directed by Banmai Takahashi, and it's from 1988. It was believed lost for over 30 years, and it's just been rediscovered and restored. Until this year, it had never played outside of Japan, and then it had its international premiere at Busan in South Korea in July, and we are just delighted. It's the greatest delight to be screening the UK premiere, and yourselves, you and Becky Dark, are going to be doing a panel following Door, which I am also just incredibly excited about because it's so important to us to make an event out of this. And I know that you're both big J-horror enthusiasts yourselves, so I can think of better people to be hosting it.
I love it. Yeah, honestly, I'm so excited for that. It's going to be such a fascinating discussion as well. And I know there's so much love in the horror community for J-horror generally, and it's just so exciting to know that there's this kind of like lost, undiscovered one that we're all going to get to see together on the big screen. So I absolutely cannot wait for that. That's awesome. Well, just let people know if there's anyone out there who is kind of like interested in going or is kind of looking into it, where can they find more information? Where can people grab their passes and tickets? Because you can buy a weekend pass to see every single film, right? You get a pass for the whole weekend.
Yes, so you can get a pass for the whole weekend. We also do day passes. And then you can also buy tickets to individual screenings as well. All of that can be found on the GRIMMFEST website, which is just www.grimmfest.com. And if you want to go straight to the tickets, then just put a / and the word festival after it. But the website is fairly easy to navigate in order to find passes and other exciting things.
I love that. That's so cool. Well, thank you so much. And my final question for you, Leonie, I've got to ask you, as a big J-horror fan, what is your favourite J-horror movie?
Oh, that's such a good question, and it depends where you're defining J-horror. But if we move it to sort of Japanese horror more generally, just to sort of skirt around that term, then I just adore the film Perfect Blue by Satoshi Kon. Oh. It's an animated film. He also did Paprika. But I remember I watched it on Halloween about 5 years ago, and it just blew my mind. It's an incredible beautiful, brilliant film. So that's my favourite of all time.
It is a beautiful film. And do you know what? I get so many requests from listeners asking me to cover that on the podcast. So I will have to do that at some point. Leonie, you should come back on and we should discuss it together at some point in the future if you're up for that.
I would absolutely love nothing more. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, Leonie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Mike. And I can't wait to have you in Manchester. I'm very, very excited.
Well, there we go. A big thank you to the brilliant Leonie Rowland for popping in there. And one more time, if you want to check out any info about GRIMMFEST, the lineup, the brilliant films that they've got on offer, or if you want to buy yourself some tickets, head to grimmfest.com. I will link all of the details in the show notes. All right, let's move into the second half of my conversation with Rosie Fletcher. We've done High Tension from 2003, so now it's time to move on to Il or Them from 2006.
Allô? Allô?
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
T'as pas entendu? La voiture, qu'est-ce qu'elle fout là?
So, Them, or Il from 2006, directed by Javier Palud and David Moreau. Rosie, just set us up another quite easy plot to summarise, right? But give us a little plot synopsis of Them.
So Them also doesn't really have a plot, but that's sort of the point.
Yeah.
So essentially, Them is about a French couple who live, she's a teacher, a French teacher, and he is a writer, and they live in a really lovely, massive, talking of massive homes, that is a massive house.
Huge.
A beautiful, enormous house in Romania. And the events of the film take place, again, over just one night. The film is short. I think it's like 77 minutes. It's short. And so basically they are terrorised in their house. That is the plot.
So you mentioned this already, but when I announced that I was doing a home invasion film, you messaged me and said, please, can I talk about this movie with you? Why this movie? What is it that you love about this movie?
Oh, loads of things. I really genuinely love this film. I think this is a brilliant film. And I did see this in a screening room. I saw this at Mr. Young's and like a Soho screening room.
Wow.
And I just remember like my fingers digging into the seat rest the whole time because it was so tense. But like, there's loads of things I love about this film, but one of them particularly is that it sort of takes place in real time. Now, when we talk about the ending, unfortunately, it doesn't, but that's a slightly different thing. But the rest of it does. So one of the things I thought was so effective, so it's about this couple, and they're called Clementine and Lucas, and they seem like a nice couple, just like a nice middle-class couple. But you're only with, like, it doesn't jump between them that often. When you're with one of them, you're worried about the other one.
Right, yeah.
You know where they are and what's happening to them. And also, like, there's loads of real-time stuff that I love. Thought it was so clever. So, for example, do you remember a bit where they're walking down the stairs and then they're going to go around the corner and into the living room and the TV's on, right? But this is not shot of person on stairs, shot of person in the doorway. They're walking down the stairs. You're walking down the stairs. You've got to wait with them all the time. You've got to wait with them. You're experiencing this at the same time as they are experiencing that.
Yes.
And I think it's clever as fuck, basically.
So good, isn't it? You could almost imagine a version of this movie where it's done in a single take in that way, right? That like we are with them in real time. Yeah.
And at points I thought, oh, is that? And then it was like, no, it isn't. But
no, but it feels that way. It does feel that way. And sometimes I find that better than if it actually is, because it's not showy. It doesn't take you out of it in that regard. You know,
yeah, people, and you're not falling over yourself to try and do all these things. And it does need to, like, it does need to cut between the two. So, like, at points they're together and at points they're apart. And when they are apart, you do get to see each of them, but not like, but quite separately. And, like I said, you're worrying about the one that you can't see when you're with the one you can see.
Yes, absolutely. What do you think? I mean, we've sort of on this already, but what do you think then of the way this movie is directed in comparison to High Tension, which again, High Tension is kind of like, it's quite stylish in a way, right? And whereas this movie it feels a little bit simpler, doesn't it? But what do you think of kind of the direction here in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, so this one is more contained. The house is massive, and the house is kind of like a very big part. You know, I know we always say this, but the house is a character, but the house is a character. And yeah, it's a slower, The film isn't slow, to be clear. It's short and it's stressful, but it is a much slower paced film. Again, it's two people who don't know what's going on, but are aware that there are people in their house, and they don't know who and they don't know why. But it isn't death, 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 death. In fact, there isn't really any death because it's just them. It's all very shadowy and mysterious, and it's basically gore free until really late on.
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of does set it apart from these other New French Extremity films. Is it because I think people think of New French Extremity as being, you know, filled with gore, but actually this movie barely has any.
Yeah,
right?
you could. I mean, it's not like I think it's a great film, but I'm not going to say it's Hitchcock level. But you could see a film like this being made by Hitchcock.
Yes,
this very simple. You don't know what's going on, and also because this one has an ending which is an absolute gut punch.
Oh my god, yes,
and not in a Switchblade romance way, but in a fucking hell. Like,
yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree with you. I love this movie as well. I came to it quite a bit later than a lot of the other big New French Extremity films because it wasn't one that was really spoken about in the same way as Martyrs, High Tension, and Inside. Right? This one kind of felt like it went a little bit under the radar, and it is more low key. It's a 70-minute exercise in suspense, basically, isn't it? It's got a really creepy opening scene out in the woods, and then it hurtles into this home invasion setup, which, as we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, is very The Strangers-esque. This came 2 years before The Strangers, but it feels like it directly inspired The Strangers. It is so well directed. It's low-key. It's not showy. It's not overly gory, but it is this brilliantly tense cat and mouse thriller where you care about the main characters. You want them to prevail, and you do really want them to evade these nasty little shits that are coming after them. But then, of course, also you get this really intriguing ending. And I think it brings into play as well, of course, this idea, we'll talk about this as we go, but who is the them in this title, right? Like, because I think one of the really interesting choices, as opposed to a lot of these other French movies, this one isn't set in France, right? It's set in Romania. So already we've got these two characters that are these kind of fish out of water, I suppose, right? They're a little bit secluded. They live in this huge house. They don't speak the language. They're kind of isolated, they're separate from this community. What do you think of that choice, this choice to kind of move the action from France to Romania for this particular story? And what does that kind of give you? Is that saying something?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So she's a French woman teaching French to Romanian kids. And so early on, she speaks to another teacher and says, I wish I could speak your language as well as you speak mine.
Yes.
It sets her up as a little bit other already. And she's already said that the kids are a bit annoying. But only on a second viewing did that even register to me. Like, I didn't know that at all. So there is maybe a bit of othering of them. And also they do have this phenomenal, huge property.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the politics to be able to speak to that.
Same.
But is it like, well, you are outsiders who've obviously got serious wealth, and he can sit around all day just writing.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and,
he literally like plays video games and writes, right?
Yeah, I'm always working. I'm always working.
Yeah, I'm always working. Exactly. And I think I do feel like these are deliberate choices that this film is making, right? And I love that it doesn't really spell out any of these themes, but you've got this couple living in this big, huge, affluent house in this potentially underserved community, right? I mean, you get the impression that these kids maybe don't come from great homes. Again, maybe there is this feeling of anger, you know, like we've talked about with New French Extremity, that this violence that is just bubbling and bursting to get out in all of these films, and it's coming out through the children of this community, right? So I think there's something very interesting there, and how this woman, this teacher, this woman who should be educating these children maybe is kind of being a little bit arrogant and ignorant to what's going on in her own community. You know, I do think there's something really interesting going on there.
So I'm sure that when you were reading around it, you will have read that it's apparently based on a true story. But that, I think, I mean, we can get into that a bit, excuse me, a bit more in a moment, but like that is a bit of a take that with a pinch of salt. I don't know how much evidence there is for that. But in that original story, apparently it was a couple, again, in a holiday apartment, I believe in Czechoslovakia, although actually, depending on which source you read, sometimes it says Romania, sometimes it says Czechoslovakia, but there might have been, if it was inspired by something like that, you could see a world where they wanted to maintain that element of otherness.
Yes.
And they don't have a community, do they?
No.
Like they don't have a load of friends who live nearby or anything like that.
No, exactly. So I think that is kind of interesting. And I like this kind of push-pull of who is the them in this situation, because we're so aligned with this kind of clearly quite wealthy French couple, and we barely get a glimpse of who these people are invading the house until the very end, until it kind of flips it in that last 5 minutes, and we get this kind of quite shocking reveal of who these invaders actually are, when we get that kind of shot of the kids kind of catching the school bus at the very end, right, as well. And it's like, oh my God, they're just these kids, which is kind of disturbing and shocking in all kinds of ways, right? And that also brings to mind other movies from this era to me, like Eden Lake and those kind of, like, what people called like hoodie horror and that kind of stuff.
Hoodie horror, that's right, yeah.
There's almost a little element of that to this, isn't there? Obviously, it's not as heavy-handed in the way that Eden Lake is.
Yeah, so I hate Eden Lake because I find it so offensive and classist.
Yeah.
But I don't hate Eel at all.
No.
Like, I really love it, actually. And like, yeah, it's got a bit of that, but I don't, like, the children are terrible. Of course they're terrible. But it had more of a vibe of who could kill a child.
Yes. Yes.
Because there's all these points. So that, there's a point where Lucas, I think he kills one of them. But then when he turns him over, is like really shocked when he sees it's a child.
Yes.
And later, like the littlest one, who's basically said to his mate, stop torturing her.
That's right.
Leads her, and she thinks to safety, but it isn't to safety. And she picks up this boulder to hit him with, and she can't.
Yeah.
It's just he's a child, and she's a teacher, which I do think is into it. Like, she just can't do it.
No.
So I think that it very much plays with that kind of expectation. And it isn't, but this is the thing. So, because I think these two movies are really interesting companion pieces. So while Switchblade Romance appears motiveless, but actually has a massive motive.
Yes.
Albeit a stupid one.
Yes.
Eel doesn't necessarily appear motiveless, but we understand at the end is completely motiveless. Right. And that's the whole fucking point. Like, why did they do it?
Why not?
No, because they wouldn't play with us.
Yeah.
Like no reason, and I understand that this is an inspiration for The Strangers.
Yes.
Because in The Strangers, isn't it? Because you were home.
Exactly. Strangers almost feels like a remake of Eel. Like it's so similar, actually, in a lot of ways, in that both movies proclaim to be based on true stories. Both of them are about these people who pointlessly, basically the whole thing happens just because they happen to be home, basically. And it's like, yeah, it is. And it is, there's something really chilling about that final line, isn't there? About they wouldn't play with us, it is really creepy.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, the ending of Switchblade Romance means that it makes it less scary because it's like, well, fortunately, my best friend doesn't turn into a mentalist if she sees my tits. Yeah. Like, so I'll be all right.
Yeah.
Whereas Eel, literally no reason, just because, and they don't care. We know nothing about them because it's not about them. I mean,
No, totally. Agreed. Because it kind of is about them, but not in the film, not in the 70 minutes that we get given in the film, right? Like, like you said, it's like how you put it with Haute Tension. It's perfect in this too, that we're so in the moment that it's like all we're getting is like a single snapshot of what's really going on in this couple's lives and what this community is that they live in as well. And like all of that, I love that kind of thing, like this idea that we've just been kind of plonked into this existing world and sort of have to piece it together in that way. Yeah, I
do too. And because both of them are very much like first person isn't right because it isn't first person, but you are with the characters, so you know as much as they do. You don't have extra information because we're the viewer. Like, we're just like, we don't know what's going on. We don't know who they are. Like, there's a scene, I don't know, about the middle where she's wandering through this like see-through cellophane, I guess.
Yes.
And she's looking, but in the other direction, and then turns, and there is this person in a hoodie. And that's like one of the few occasions where we know something she doesn't know. Because most of the time, we are with their eye line, or or on their shoulder.
Yes.
So we have to walk down the stairs with them. We have to go around the corner with them. If they spy something, we spy it, but we don't spy it first. But that was one of the few times where you're like, oh my God, there's a...
So scary. And actually that happens, it's a really effective opening scene as well, which I'd completely forgotten about because I hadn't seen this film in about 10 years. And the mother and daughter that get attacked in the car at the beginning as well, I'd completely forgotten about that scene. But again, it's that same thing where we have no idea what happens to the mother. She disappears and we are just inside the confines of the car for the rest of that scene with the daughter, right, while creepy shit starts happening. And it is really great.
It is, but I don't, like, to me, the beginning feels like you've tacked that on because the film isn't long enough.
Oh, totally. And also, like, yeah, give us a scare at the beginning of the film kind of thing. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, it's well shot. It's a cool scene, but it kind of amounts to nothing.
Yeah, no, it's true, because you think, oh, is it going to have an effect because Clementine drives past that car wreckage, and is something going to happen here?
I mean,
but no, it has nothing to do with that, really, does it?
I think she makes a comment about it to Lucas, doesn't she? But really, ultimately, it felt a bit like, nah, you've just bunged that in for an early scare and make it longer than 70 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. 70 minutes, though, what a joy, right? As well.
God.
Like, I love that is shorter than most like TV episodes these days as well. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's such a compact and kind of economical film.
Yes.
Like it does so much with so little.
Mm-hmm. It really, really does. Do you find that the pacing and the tension is sustained from the moment when the home invasion kind of begins, I suppose, all the way through to the end? Does it kind of keep up that momentum for you?
It absolutely does for me. I mean, and because it has, I think, like, I hesitate to call them jump scares, but they did make me jump. So one of the best ones is the scene where she's looking through the spy hole. Yeah, and you're trying to, and we're peering through the spy hole, of course, because we can't see anything more than she can. She's trying to see where Lucas is, and she's looking through, and then gets stabbed in the eye. And it made me jump, even though I knew it was coming. You know.
Yes, absolutely. That's it. It does feel like more of a traditionally scary horror film as well than maybe some of these other kind of French Extremity movies in that regard.
But it certainly feels more jumpy than it does. Brutal or gory or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. I don't know how much more. I mean, this is the thing about this movie, is that it's so kind of simple, right? And it's so beautifully simple. But is there anything else that kind of you feel is worth discussing or talking about with this movie that we've missed?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is the ending.
Yeah.
So it is a really effective. So essentially, they leave the house, try and get away. Lucas has been injured. Clementine jumps the fence. He then, can't remember exactly what happens, finds the car. He's there screaming, blah, blah, blah. And then they go into the catacombs, essentially.
Yeah.
And I understand that the actress was very frightened of, claustrophobic.
Yes.
So that was like a complete nightmare, and it would be, for anyone.
Yeah.
But it's not the closing scene, but towards the closing scene is her. She's going towards the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's bars and she can't get out. So she's got her arms out and she's screaming, and all these cars are going past and ignoring her. It's quite the moment. It's a really great scene. The only beef I have with it, which I completely understand in terms of filmmaking, is it's light.
Yes.
Not enough time has passed for it to be light. Like, the film is essentially in real time. Like, how is it morning? How is it full daylight? And I know why, because it wouldn't have looked as good in the dark. And it's sort of making the point that, you know, you're here screaming and everybody else is just going about their day.
Yeah, I know. It's a really good... it is, and absolutely, you're right, actually. Like, I hadn't really thought about it. The fact that we're in real time and how is it morning already? But it works so well because...
It does. I mean, do you know what? That's a bit of a sniffy thing to complain about.
No, I mean...
I really think it's a great movie.
It is. It's so good. And, you know, there's so many... Again, there is something really chilling about this with home invasion. I mean, I know they're not technically in the home at this point, but I think there is something fun and interesting about, you know, do you set a movie in... what's scarier kind of thing? Setting a movie in a house that is literally in the middle of nowhere, or a home that is in the middle of a busy street and yet still no one is helping you and no one notices you, right, as well. And there is something like... can be utilized to even scarier effect in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
definitely. Which is very cool.
And when we see the kids walking away, so, all right, question for you. How many of the kids have been killed, do you think?
Oh.
If any?
Yeah, I maybe... Do we see him kill one? Is that it? Is it just one?
When I was so I watched it, but I wasn't quite sure whether... Because early on, she pushes one dude out the window, but I don't think he dies. Later on, certainly one of the kids is stabbed by Lucas, but we're never clear whether that person died or whether they didn't. And then later on, when Clementine's being tortured, that's a horrible scene.
Yes.
Got the bag over her face and the kids pushing it, and then the little kid's going, stop it, stop it, stop it. I think that Lucas then kills that kid. So maybe that's 2 dead. But if that is the case, so that would mean there were 6 of them and only 4 of them leave. The other 4 don't give any kinds of shits about that either.
No, they don't care. No. It's just that you get the feeling at the end of that it's just been another night for them, right? Like, again, this is something that you get in The Strangers. You get it in funny games, like this idea that it's like, right, move on to the next house now kind of thing. They're going to go to school and they might do the same again the following night, basically, which is creepy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that is creepy. Also, like, I think one of them's a girl.
Yeah, there's, and again, this is not quite this, but a lot of these sorts of movies as well are so inspired by Sharon Tate murder, the Manson family murders, right? Like this, in some ways, the original true crime home invasion story, right? Of these kind of young people for a laugh, basically breaking into people's big affluent home and murdering them in this kind of like wealthy neighborhood. And that almost is where kind of that subgenre of horror sort of begins. And there is obviously these are much younger children, which is kind of disturbing, but there is something about it that sort of reminds me of that even as well,
No, you're completely right.
Yeah,
but then perhaps it's even more chilling that they don't seem to have a leader.
No. And I love these little, there's these little sound effects that these kids make that almost sound monstrous as well, right? And like the kid with the little whirling clicky
little
thing.
Rattle. Yeah.
This almost could sound like the kind of crawling monsters in The Descent or something, like there is something almost inhuman to the noises that these kids make in the film, which is cool.
Well, that's right. And actually the sound design in Eel is really good as well, because that's sort of how it starts off, that they hear something, but they're not sure what it is. Or even when in the very first scene, the girl in the car hears whispering voices, and it's just like, what's that? What? And the couple hear something and go down, and you're screaming, no, don't go outside.
Yeah.
But again, that couple don't make stupid decisions. Honestly, you're thinking, what would I do? Would I sit in a corner with a stick? Or even though it's children and these are 2 adults, I don't think they could have won that one.
No, you're absolutely right. That in itself is kind of scary too, I think. Like this idea of like, what would I do in this situation? And you like to think that you'd be able to fight off some kids in your own home. But actually, when you're up against people that genuinely would happily kill you, could you kill them back?
Would happily kill you, and also don't care about each other.
No. Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this feeling that they just have nothing to lose, basically, right?
It's quite a nihilistic film, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And again, that is such a home invasion thing. They're all just a bit bleak and nihilistic and hopeless, I think, by the end as well. So yeah, you've got to really be in the mood for these films, I think, haven't you, ultimately?
Yeah, you do. Although at least with Eel, it's only short.
It's true. And it's funny, isn't it? Because I feel like not enough people kind of talk about this movie too. Like, I don't know, like in the context of home invasion, I feel like maybe it gets a bit overshadowed by Hollywood movies like The Strangers. And then even in French Extremity, I feel like it's not talked about as much as Switchblade Romance or Martyrs or Inside as well. It kind of almost feels like a little forgotten gem or something,
No, I agree. And the thing is, it's not actually that extreme.
No.
So probably it doesn't get talked about in the same breath as like Martyrs and Frontier and
You're right.
Inside, because it isn't that extreme. And yeah, I do think The Strangers has overshadowed it.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, I think.
Yeah, it's a shame because it's bigger budget and it had Liv Tyler and it has scary masks. So I think that ultimately made it more of a kind of iconic American horror movie, didn't it? But yeah, this movie is actually so well made, I think, isn't it? Like, again, like you said about high tension, like for a relatively almost plotless movie. It's just like an exercise in tension and horror, isn't it? And it's so good at that.
I really like this film. Like, I'm really glad I got to talk to you about it. I do think it's clever, it's bleak, it's quite scary, doesn't hang about. I thought both performances, both the leads were really, really good. And I felt sympathy towards them. Even though I remembered the film, I didn't remember every single moment of it. So there were still bits that caught me off guard. I didn't, and it didn't have anything particularly, not sure how well that's dated to me. Like, it feels low budget, but I could see somebody making that today and it being successful.
Completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I'm a big fan as well. I love it. I'm just having a look at what else these filmmakers have done, but they haven't really done a huge amount.
Well,
Xavier Palourde. Yeah, go on.
Well, they did the remake of The Eye.
That's right. Yeah, that's which I don't really remember much about, to be honest.
I saw it, and I think I thought it was all right, but like that was a time, that was at a time when everybody was remaking all of the sort of J horror and K horror.
Yes.
So I think I thought,
yeah,
not as good as the original, but
yeah. Exactly. I think it was one of the ones that it wasn't awful, was it? But it was just just another remake. Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, it was a little bit forgettable. Hence, neither of us especially remembering it.
Exactly that. Well, there you go. Well, Rosie, thank you so much. Before we finish, just final question for you. What, if it's not one of these two movies, which it might be, what is your favourite home invasion film?
Gosh. I mean, you know what? If you'd asked me, like, basically it is them, because that's why I really, really, really wanted to talk about them. However, I was having a little scan over your previous episodes, because there's certain things that I don't think about as home invasion movies that are. And so you had Single White Female and Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and there is a special place in my heart for those movies.
Yeah.
Like, I was sort of like, oh my God, I would love to have talked about those. Yeah, I think Jennifer Jason Leigh is my favourite actress, and I just think Hand That Rocks the Cradle is so clever and wonderful, and that never occurred to me.
Well, no, and I got quite a few cross people complaining about us covering those for some reason. But like, in my opinion, I think there's something really interesting about these kind of like slightly softer home invasions, I suppose, but about these kind of women infiltrating the home and kind of disrupting the equilibrium, the family home, right? And Fatal Attraction, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, like they're so interesting in that context, you know?
And like, I guess like it's not quite the same, but I could probably add Pacific Heights to that list.
Yes.
Where it's not home invasion because it's Michael Keaton's house that he's rented, but it is massively like this nightmarish situation of this domestic setup that he's fucking up. But yeah, Hand That Rocks the Cradle and Single White Female, like, I love them in your list. I think they definitely deserve to be there.
I love that. Amazing choices. Well, Rosie, thank you so much for joining me. As ever, it's been so much fun to chat with you.
Yes,
and just remind people, if they want to come and find you, find more of the stuff that you do, where can they find you?
So you can find us on Den of Geek. If you're listening in America, then we have a quarterly print magazine that you can get in a whole bunch of comic stores. And you can find me on Twitter at Rosarella Fletch.
Amazing. Rosie, thank you so much for joining me.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike.
And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and a huge thank you to this week's brilliant guest, Rosie Fletcher. So let me know what you thought of this week's episode, what you think of these two movies, High Tension and Them. High Tension had some issues, but generally I'm a big fan of both these films. I would love to hear what you thought too. Get in touch. You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, etc. If you want to discuss this week's episode with fellow listeners, you can join the discussion group. That's the Evolution of Horror discussion group, which you can find on Facebook. And if you want to support this podcast and get treated to regular bonus content, sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/Evolution of Horror. You can find this podcast in all the usual podcast places, and if you get a spare minute, I'd be so grateful if you could drop us a little rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever other apps you use, as that really helps us get discovered by new listeners. So, on to next week then, and we continue through the Grizzly 2000s. Next week, I'm going to be joined by the brilliant Alex Ayling, and we are going to be talking about two movies that demonstrate the danger of showing up at a stranger's house when you've only met them on the internet. Next week, Alex Ayling and I are going to be talking about Hard Candy from 2005 and Creep from 2014. Cannot wait. Join us next week for all of this and more on the evolution of horror.